At the corporate gala, my older brother, Wyatt Renshaw, smirked as he dragged me toward his intimidating boss, Mr. Carlisle Monroe, and whispered, "This is our family's disgrace." I froze, my face burning like fire. Every eye in the room seemed to land on me, judging me, laughing silently. Stick with me. What happened next changed everything. Mr. Monroe looked at me with a calm, almost gentle smile, the kind that made people unsure if they were in trouble or being offered a lifeline. "It's nice to meet you," he said softly, his voice steady, measured. I expected him to laugh, to confirm my brother's cruel words, but instead, he extended his hand with respect. My heart skipped a beat, confusion mixing with relief. I had always known my family didn't take me seriously. My parents praised Wyatt endlessly, calling him the golden son while brushing off my achievements. Even small successes were met with a sigh, a shrug, or a comparison to him. But this moment was worse. Public humiliation cut deeper than private criticisms, and Wyatt knew it. He thrived on making me small, and tonight he had done it in front of everyone I wanted to impress. As I shook Mr. Monroe's hand, I could feel Wyatt watching, expecting me to shrink, to stutter, to feel defeated. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. Not tonight, not ever. I met Mr. Monroe's gaze, trying to hold the strength I didn't quite feel yet, and for the first time I realized maybe, just maybe, I had an ally in him. The rest of the gala blurred around me. Conversations, laughter, and clinking glasses became background noise. My mind raced with ideas, plans, and possibilities. If Wyatt thought this was the end, he was wrong. I would prove him wrong. I would show my family, my brother, and maybe even Mr. Monroe that I was not a disgrace. I wasn't weak. I wasn't invisible. That night, as I walked away from the crowd, I silently made a promise to myself. This was the beginning. The humiliation I felt would not break me. It would build me. And Wyatt, he had no idea what was coming. My revenge, carefully planned, was just starting to take shape. I sat alone in my apartment that night, still feeling the heat from the gala. My mind kept replaying Wyatt's smirk, the way he had dragged me like I was nothing. It wasn't just tonight. This had been happening for years. My parents always saw him as the perfect son. Every achievement I had was somehow smaller than his smallest success. If I made a mistake, no matter how small, they made sure I carried the blame. Wyatt never had to answer for anything. I thought about my college graduation. They had barely shown up, distracted by some work event Wyatt had scheduled. My promotions at work were always delayed, my ideas dismissed. Meanwhile, Wyatt moved up effortlessly, praised for skills he didn't even have. The anger I felt wasn't just embarrassment anymore. It was a burning frustration at the injustice of it all. The more I looked back, the more I realized Wyatt had been actively sabotaging me. Emails left unanswered, meetings I wasn't informed about, rumors subtly planted about my work ethic. At first, I thought it was coincidence, bad timing, or just luck. But now it was clear. He had been undermining me quietly, making sure everyone, including our parents, saw me as incapable. He wanted me small, invisible, and humiliated, and somehow I had let him. I could feel resentment twisting inside me, bitter but sharp, awakening a sense of determination. I wasn't going to sit back and let him keep controlling the narrative of my life. I had worked too hard to be erased by someone else's arrogance. I could be my own person, prove my worth, and reclaim the respect I deserved. It wasn't going to be easy. I knew I had to be smart, careful, and patient. Revenge wasn't about shouting or confrontation. It was about strategy, about taking back my dignity in a way that Wyatt and my parents couldn't ignore. I started listing out what I needed. My own achievements recognized, my career moving forward, my confidence rebuilt. That night, I made a silent promise. I would stop letting my family's favoritism define me. I would find a way to show them all that I was capable, strong, and independent. No more hiding, no more being blamed for things I didn't do. Wyatt had underestimated me for too long, and it was finally time to prove him wrong. My plan was just beginning, and I was ready to take back my life. The day after the gala, I got a call from Mr. Monroe's assistant asking me to meet him in his office. My heart raced the whole way there. I didn't know if it was a reward, a warning, or something worse. When I walked in, Mr. Monroe was already there, calm and composed, looking like he had been expecting me. "Lena," he said, his voice steady but kind. "Sit down. I wanted to speak with you privately." I hesitated for a moment, then took the seat across from his massive oak desk. The room smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood, but I barely noticed. I was too focused on him, trying to read what this could mean. Then he said something that stopped me cold. "I know what your brother has been doing," he said, leaning back. "Wyatt isn't as perfect as your family thinks. I've noticed the small things, missed meetings, projects going wrong without explanation, whispers that don't make sense. I've been watching for someone capable enough to take on what he's been trying to hide." I blinked, unsure if I had heard him right. All my years of frustration, embarrassment, and feeling powerless flashed through my mind. Someone outside my family knew the truth, and they were offering me a chance to do something about it. "I have a project coming up," Mr. Monroe continued. "High stakes, very visible, with a lot riding on its success. I need someone smart, reliable, and persistent. Someone who can handle pressure. I want you to lead it." My stomach dropped. This was exactly what I needed, but could I trust him? Was this really an opportunity, or just another way for Wyatt to look better by comparison? But then I remembered the way he had spoken to me at the gala. Calm, respectful, not mocking. He wasn't like my brother. I can do it," I said, my voice trembling slightly but firm. I felt hope bubbling inside me, a cautious excitement mixed with fear. This was my chance, not just to succeed, but to reclaim some control, to show my family that I wasn't weak, and maybe even to turn the tables on Wyatt. Mr. Monroe nodded, a small smile appearing. "I thought you'd say that. Just remember, Lena, this isn't about revenge. It's about proving your worth. Everything else will follow." As I left his office, my mind was racing. I could feel the thrill of possibility, the spark of revenge, and the weight of responsibility all at once. This project could change everything. And I was ready. The first day on the project, I felt both excitement and nerves buzzing in my chest. Mr. Monroe had given me a chance I had only dreamed of, but I knew Wyatt wouldn't just sit back and let me shine. He had a way of twisting situations, making me look bad without anyone noticing at first. I had to be careful. From the moment I stepped into the office, I noticed subtle things, whispers behind my back, colleagues avoiding eye contact, a few who smiled too brightly when I walked by. It wasn't open hostility, but I could sense minor betrayals forming. Files went missing, emails got delayed, and someone accidentally forgot to include me in meetings. It was frustrating, but I refused to panic. I reminded myself to stay focused. I spent hours studying every document, checking every email trail, and slowly, I began to uncover patterns. Wyatt wasn't just trying to block me. He had a whole network of lies, little manipulations meant to cover his mistakes and make others question my abilities. There were financial discrepancies he had hidden, reports he had falsified, and subtle moves designed to make him look trustworthy while making me appear careless. At first, fear crept in. Exposing him could backfire. If I made a single mistake, my reputation and the project could crumble. But the more I documented, the more I realized I had power. I had proof, and with patience, I could use it to shift everything in my favor. I started organizing my notes carefully, thinking several steps ahead. Every move I made was deliberate. I checked and double-checked everything, knowing that one slip could ruin months of planning. The tension was exhausting, but beneath it was a steady determination. I wasn't just working for recognition. I was planning a strategy. By the end of the week, I understood something important. This wasn't going to be a quick fix. I couldn't humiliate Wyatt with one mistake or one small exposure. To truly take him down, I had to play a long game. Every action, every project milestone, every interaction would be part of the plan. I leaned back in my chair, exhausted but focused, and realized the truth. Patience was my strongest tool. Wyatt had underestimated me for years, and now, I had the chance to prove not only my worth but also his weakness. The path ahead was long, but I was ready to walk it carefully, step by step, until the day came when everything would fall into place, and Wyatt would finally face the consequences of underestimating me. The day of the big company meeting, my nerves were buzzing, but I kept my focus sharp. I had been working quietly for weeks, gathering proof, watching Wyatt's moves, and learning the patterns he relied on to make himself look good. Today was the day I could hit him without anyone knowing it was me. As the meeting started, Wyatt took the lead, confidently presenting numbers and updates. At first, everyone nodded along like they always did, trusting him blindly. But I had prepared a subtle counter. I had quietly compiled reports showing discrepancies in his projects, minor errors he had tried to hide, and evidence of misleading statements he had made. I didn't speak up myself. Instead, I had arranged for the reports to be delivered to the team right before his presentation, under a generic company email. I watched from the side as Wyatt began going over the slides. At first, he didn't notice anything. But then his confidence faltered, his voice slightly rising as he tried to explain numbers that didn't add up. People started asking questions, probing inconsistencies he hadn't expected anyone to see. I could see the confusion on his face, the panic flicker in his eyes. He tried to recover, but the cracks were obvious. A strange mix of satisfaction and guilt washed over me. Satisfaction because finally the world could see Wyatt the way I always had, a manipulator who depended on lies and favoritism. Guilt because even though I hadn't directly confronted him, I was still undermining my own brother in front of everyone. My stomach tightened, but I reminded myself that this wasn't about cruelty. It was about justice. Mr. Monroe, who was quietly observing from the back, gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. Later, he would give me advice that seemed cryptic at first. Patience is stronger than anger. Let them find the cracks themselves. Now I understood. The subtle approach, letting Wyatt expose himself without revealing my hand, was far more effective than a direct attack. By the end of the meeting, Wyatt was rattled. He looked around suspiciously, trying to figure out who had set him up, while his credibility among colleagues took its first real hit. I stayed calm, blending into the background, letting the satisfaction sink in. Revenge, I realized, wasn't just about immediate payback. It was about strategy, timing, and keeping control. The first strike was mine, carefully planned, and the best part? Wyatt had no idea who had outsmarted him. When I got home that evening, I didn't expect Wyatt to be waiting in the living room, pacing like a caged animal. The moment he saw me, his face twisted with anger. "What did you do today?" he demanded, his voice sharp, eyes flashing. I stayed calm, pretending I didn't hear the accusation. "You think you're so clever," he continued, throwing his hands up. "Do you know what you've done to me in that meeting? People are looking at me differently now. Do you know how humiliating that was?" He was pacing faster, his words spilling out, frantic and unsteady. I felt a flicker of satisfaction, but I didn't let it show. I simply stood there, arms crossed, letting him unravel. "I didn't do anything," I said quietly. "Maybe people just noticed the truth for the first time." Wyatt froze for a moment, then laughed bitterly. "The truth? You think this is about truth? You're trying to destroy me. You've always hated me, and now you've finally made your move." I didn't reply. Instead, I watched him lose control, words failing him as he tried to justify himself. For the first time, my parents, who had always ignored my efforts, seemed to notice something was different. Mom glanced at me, her expression uncertain, while Dad frowned, looking at Wyatt with a hint of disapproval. Wyatt's arrogance, the one trait that had shielded him for years, was cracking. He didn't understand how someone could quietly outmaneuver him without being loud or aggressive. I kept my voice calm, my face neutral, letting him flail while the truth sank into the room. Then, as Wyatt stormed past me to the kitchen, I noticed a folder sticking out of the drawer where he kept his personal papers. Curiosity got the better of me. I pulled it out and found something that made my stomach drop. Evidence of a secret Wyatt had been hiding for years. Financial dealings, shady favors, lies to both family and colleagues. It was all there, enough to completely destroy his reputation if it ever came out. I closed the folder carefully and slipped it into my bag. For the first time, I felt the full weight of power in my hands. Wyatt had underestimated me for years, thinking I was weak, incapable, and quiet. Now, I had the tools to shift the balance entirely. That night, as Wyatt continued to rage and my parents watched silently, I realized one thing. This was just the beginning. I had the advantage, and soon, everything Wyatt had built on lies would start to crumble. I only had to be patient and strategic. Late one night, I sat at my desk going through the documents I had quietly collected over the past weeks. Wyatt had always seemed untouchable, his charm and confidence hiding the mess he left behind. But now, with every paper I opened, the picture became clearer and darker. There were bank statements, contracts, and emails showing money being moved without explanation. Investments that had gone wrong because of his reckless choices, and promises he had broken to people who trusted him, including Mr. Monroe. The deeper I dug, the more I realized how much he had betrayed not just our family, but everyone who believed in him. He had lied to Mom and Dad about business deals, manipulated numbers to make himself look successful, and quietly ruined relationships with colleagues to cover his mistakes. Even worse, he had tried to pin blame on me at times, ensuring I took the fall for his failures. The betrayal stung, not just because it was clever and cruel, but because it had gone unnoticed for so long. I felt a knot in my stomach. Part of me hesitated, wondering if exposing him was right. It wasn't just revenge, it was destroying someone's life. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't cruelty. This was justice. Wyatt had built his life on lies, manipulation, and favoritism. If I stayed silent, I would be complicit in letting him continue. I started planning carefully. This had to be done publicly, where the people he had fooled for years could see the truth. The timing, the audience, the evidence, it all needed to be perfect. One misstep, and I could look vindictive instead of justified. But if done right, it would reveal his true character and finally set the record straight. I mapped out every detail: the meeting, the documents, the sequence in which the facts would come out. I wanted the humiliation to hit where it mattered most: his professional credibility and the respect he falsely commanded. I rehearsed in my mind how I would stay calm, how I would present the evidence without sounding like I was gloating. By the time I went to bed that night, I had a clear plan. This confrontation would be more than personal. It would be strategic, precise, and unavoidable. Wyatt had underestimated me, and soon, everyone would see not just the lies he had built his life on, but the truth I had quietly uncovered. It wasn't about me winning. It was about justice finally being served. The company event was buzzing with chatter, laughter, and the soft clinking of glasses, but I could barely hear it. All my focus was on Wyatt, who was standing near the center, smiling confidently, as if nothing could touch him. Tonight, that smile would finally crack. I had rehearsed every detail, every document, every word I would say. When the moment felt right, I stepped forward and asked the room for a moment of attention. Conversations slowed, and Wyatt looked at me with a puzzled frown. "Lena, what are you doing?" he whispered, a hint of panic in his voice. I ignored him and turned to address the crowd, my voice calm but firm. "I think it's time the team and Mr. Monroe saw the full picture," I began. I presented the evidence I had collected: emails, financial statements, and records of Wyatt's manipulations. Every lie he had told, every project he had sabotaged, every way he had tried to make me look incapable, it all went up on the screen for everyone to see. The room went silent, eyes widening as the truth unfolded before them. Wyatt's face turned pale, then red, then a mixture of disbelief and anger. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Mr. Monroe watched quietly, his expression unreadable, letting the evidence speak for itself. My parents, who had always overlooked my efforts and praised Wyatt, stood frozen, shock written across their faces. The golden sun they had admired for so long was crumbling in real time. A mix of vindication and sorrow swept through me. I had achieved what I wanted, my reputation restored, the truth finally seen. But I also felt the sting of what this revealed about my family and the years of lies that had hurt so many. Revenge wasn't sweet in the way I imagined. It was complicated, heavy, and satisfying all at once. By the end of the night, Wyatt was powerless. Colleagues avoided his gaze, and whispers followed him wherever he went. I stayed calm, letting the moment sink in, knowing I had played it perfectly. My work, my character, my truth, all were visible, undeniable. I walked away from him quietly, my head held high, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. For the first time in years, I wasn't the family's disgrace. I was Lena Renshaw, capable, respected, and unshaken, and Wyatt's facade had finally shattered completely. After the company event, everything changed. I was offered a new role, leading an important division, and for the first time, my work and ideas were recognized without anyone trying to undermine me. My colleagues looked at me differently, with respect and trust, and I felt a quiet pride settle in my chest. It wasn't just about the promotion. It was about finally being seen for who I truly was. Wyatt, on the other hand, had become a shadow of himself. His colleagues avoided him, questioning his decisions and integrity. The mistakes he had covered up for years were now visible to everyone, and he couldn't charm or manipulate his way out of it. At home, things were tense. My parents no longer treated him as the perfect son. They were cautious around him, noticing his arrogance and the lies that had built his image. He had no allies left, and the isolation was his consequence. Sitting in my new office, I thought about everything that had happened: the humiliation, the betrayal, the careful planning, and the confrontation. Revenge wasn't simple or joyful. It came with a mixture of feelings: relief at being finally recognized, empowerment from taking control of my life, and a touch of melancholy for the years lost and the family fractured by lies. I realized that revenge wasn't about making someone else suffer. It was about reclaiming my own dignity and place in the world. One afternoon, I finally decided to speak with my parents. I explained how I had felt all those years, the ways they had favored Wyatt, and how their blind trust had allowed him to manipulate situations and hurt me. I tried to keep my voice calm, not angry, focusing on expressing my feelings honestly. They listened, first surprised, then reflective. It was awkward and uncomfortable, but it was necessary. For the first time, I felt like we could start addressing the cracks in our family and begin some kind of healing. Looking back, I understood that the journey wasn't just about outsmarting Wyatt or exposing him. It was about finding my own strength and learning that I could stand up for myself. I had taken back my life, and though the past couldn't be erased, I could move forward with clarity and confidence. I was no longer a shadow in my family or at work. I was Lena Renshaw, respected, capable, and finally in control of my own path. I met Mr. Monroe in his office the day after everything had settled at the company. The room was quiet, the soft hum of the city outside the windows barely noticeable. He looked at me with a calm, approving smile, and for a moment, I felt the weight of everything I had done lift from my shoulders. "You've handled everything with intelligence and strength," he said, his voice steady. "Most people would have let anger or frustration cloud their judgment, but you stayed calm, strategic, and focused. I'm impressed." I felt a small smile tug at my lips. It wasn't just about the praise. It was a reminder that my efforts had been seen and appreciated by someone who mattered. I had exposed Wyatt, reclaimed my place at work, and finally taken control of my life. But I wanted him to understand, even subtly, that the true victory wasn't just about making Wyatt powerless. "You know," I said carefully, "this wasn't just about him. It was about me too. Taking back what's mine, proving to myself that I'm capable and strong." I let my words hang in the air, knowing he understood the deeper meaning. My revenge had been quiet, careful, and complete. Not about humiliation for its own sake, but about reclaiming my dignity and independence. Mr. Monroe nodded, a knowing look in his eyes. "Exactly. That's the kind of person who will go far, not just in this company, but in life." His words felt like a final seal of approval, a quiet confirmation that I had chosen the right path. Later, I stepped out onto the balcony of my office, the city lights stretching out below me, glowing like 1,000 tiny victories. The air was cool against my skin, and for the first time in years, I felt free, untethered from my brother's manipulations, my parents' favoritism, and the weight of years spent proving myself. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Everything I had been through, the humiliation, the betrayals, the careful planning, and the exposure of Wyatt, had led me here. I was no longer defined by anyone else's expectations or lies. I was Lena Renshaw, independent, respected, and fully in control of my own destiny. For a long moment, I just stood there, letting the city lights reflect in my eyes. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been mine. Quietly, carefully, I had taken back my life, and now, nothing could shake the strength I had found within myself. If you've ever felt underestimated or overlooked, take Lena's journey as a reminder. Document your work, stay patient, and approach challenges strategically. Standing up for yourself doesn't mean seeking revenge. It means reclaiming your dignity and building a path to success. Take control of your career and personal life today.